Here's Geshe Nima. He sent this message from Vulture Peak. Good morning, everyone. This morning I went to Vulture Peak, where Buddha gave the second wheel of teaching, including the Heart Sutra and so forth. I did recitation of the Heart Sutra and included all of you in my prayers of the Tibetan Buddhism Center for World Peace, and that the center will flourish and benefit infinite sentient beings for many generations to come. And then here he is at Vulture Peak. And here he is. Now, through the donations that, now this is me talking again, through the donations that we kind of get off and on throughout the year, and if you ever, our finances are very transparent, and I'm thinking I should just like post them on the website, but in general, we, as a rule, inviolable rule, actually, all of the funds that are donated go for three things: monk travel, monk donations,
monk and nun,
and airfare for monks.
and nuns.
Occasionally, and food for monks
and nuns.
There have been a few occasions where we spent a little money for food when we had, like, for example, Patricia's memorial service last year or 2 years ago. Anyways, so thank you all for the donations. He sent a message related. We'd sent him from the center the other day $250 as an offering for Losar, the Tibetan New Year, which is right now. And we've been lax. We haven't informed you all about. Please look up Tibetan New Year Losar. We'll send it out this week so that you can accumulate some extra merit for doing practices during Losar. But here's what he did say. Thank you very much. Happy New Year. And then I don't have this anywhere, but he's sent a Losar.
Well, you're sharing your screen, not your.
Oh.
Don't worry about it.
Well, anyway, it's the year of the dragon, and that's really all. He sent some other movies of him, but just of him in Bodh Gaya, where he is right now, and he's on retreat. So anyways, that covers Geshe Nima. We sent him a contribution from the accumulated odds and ends of donations that all of y'all have been donating, and for the Tibetan New Year, which is customary. And that it wraps up and Brian, I see you're on there. He asked me to make sure that you got his response. So
I did, and I will respond. It was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I just needed to know that you got his message.
Yeah,
and yeah, I assume you did because you would have said so. So
yes, no, it was extremely helpful.
That's great. We're very,
as always.
We all really are lucky to have a connection with Geshe. That is all I can say. Okay. Now.
Oh, that's
I'm finished. Christopher, what do you want? Up, down, anything?
Just back to
stop the screen share.
Yeah, you can stop the screen share, and we will start with our opening prayers.
Oh, Merritt, you look beautiful.
Hey, happy belated birthday, Merritt.
Yes, happy belated birthday.
Okay, let's start with our opening prayers. Okay. Taking refuge in generating bodhicitta. Let's recite one verse in English so we are clear about what it's saying, and then do the next two verses in the Tibetan with the melody that goes with it. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye terang sopi chognamna, Jangchu bardu dagni kyapsuchi, Dagi jinso gipe sonamki, Drola penchir sangye drupansho. Sangye terang sopi chognamna, Jangchu bardu dagni kyapsuchi, Dagi jinso gipe sonamki, Drola penchir sangye drupansho. For immeasurable thoughts, may all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Happy Losar, welcome you guys. Ajay, Dicky, and family are here. So on the next page, the top of the next page is the 7-limb prayer. And just imagine that Buddhas, your teachers, spiritual teachers, all the bodhisattvas are in the space in front of you as we recite this prayer in English. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I declare all my negativities accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until samsara ends, and turn the wheel of dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate the merit created by myself and others to the great enlightenment. And next we have the mandala offering. This is an offering that we're making to the Buddha, our spiritual masters, and all the bodhisattvas in front of us, in space in front of us. And imagine here that we existed in a world where all sentient beings were able to study and practice the Dharma, and we're doing so. And how beautiful and wonderful that would be. And imagine this as an offering to the assembly in front of us. Sajibaki Juchimeto Ramviralingji Nidegelvali Sangye Jindu Midegelvali Rokunam Dachina Chevasyo Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Tam Niriyatayami. Okay, let's see. We took a little time at the beginning. Is Anne here? Anne Renthal? Okay, so I won't. Well, let's only do let's not do all of the mantras that all of the 4 mantras. Let's do 2 of them. Let's do Shakyamuni Buddha. Oh, I wanted to hold that. All right, you're gonna just get that up on the screen? Great. All right, so
Here's the mantra.
right now, put the picture up. So we want to imagine, and just imagine, don't think you have to actually see this. So if I was to say, if I were to say to you, imagine a light bulb, you would have some kind of a mental appearance in your mind. So don't get hung up at thinking that you have to see the image in your mind that looks exactly like the one on the screen. Just take note of this, and then imagine that is in the space in front of you. And we will be saying the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. And here's the so sort of you can look at that picture right now. And as I'm telling you what to imagine, you start to imagine this, and then we will say the mantra. From your heart, generate the request to the Buddha that you be inspired to follow the path to full enlightenment. Make this request on behalf of all living beings who are trapped in samsara. Rays of light stream from the figure of the Buddha before you. This light enters your body and quickly removes all negativities, obscurations, and hindrances, freeing you to progress quickly on the path. Imagine that this light flows not only to you, but to all living beings situated in space around you. Imagine that they all receive such inspiration and blessings as we recite the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. And this is Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muniye Swoha. And we will do this 11 times. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muniye Swoha. 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 And when you recite this mantra on your own, you do it many more times than that, as many times as you wish. And what I would say is, the more one gets into a rhythm and a pattern of saying the mantra, and you imagine the visualization that was described, over time, this becomes very powerful, energetically powerful. You have to practice this, and one feels a real connection with the Buddha and before you, and a real connection with all the sentient beings surrounding you. So this is a wonderful mantra to do. You could just do it every morning. This is a big part of your practice. It could be your practice if you have no time for anything else. All right, let's put up, Kavita, put up Manjushri, this orange one. Okay, great. So Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom. And if you look at this image, you'll see that Manjushri, the figure, is a saffron color. And in all of these Buddha images, think that they're made of light, that this is a brilliant light, like the light of a rainbow, but very, very brilliant. So it's transparent, but filled with energy, filled with light energy, not like a gross type of being, but a light energy being. And this color, the saffron, it comes from there's spiritual significance to the saffron color. If you think of the saffron plant, it's sort of like a purple flower, and out of the middle of these flowers are these brilliant stems or threads of saffron color. And the spiritual significance of this is that through the emergence of spiritual truth, the world that is obscured by distractions can become purified. Wisdom can come through and cut through that. So this is the significance of Manjushri being this. Think of it as a brilliant saffron color made of light. Now you will look at, if you look at Manjushri's left hand, at his heart, there is a stem. He's holding a stem of a lotus. And the lotus grows up towards his left ear, and it is blossoming into a flower. This is the blossoming or emergence of the understanding of wisdom, the understanding of the nature of self and the nature of phenomena. And within that lotus, at the center of the lotus, you'll notice that there is a book. It's wrapped up, but this is the Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom sutra that the Buddha was giving at Vulture Peak, where Geshe Nima just was. That is going into his ear. So think of this as the hearing this Dharma, hearing these wisdom teachings. Our own development of wisdom will blossom to the point that we actually have a realization of the nature of the self and the nature of phenomena. Then if you look at his right hand, he's holding up sort of over his head a double-edged sword that is flaming. Now there are various interpretations for this, and they all have to do with emptiness. But I want to go to a question, a particular question that Anne Renthal asked yesterday. And as is the case with Anne, her questions are right on the mark. Very, very good questions. And I'm so glad she asked it. If you will look closely, and you probably can't see on the screen, but if you look closely at this sword, it has two edges to it. And then as it gets up to where it becomes a point, those two edges go away and it just goes to this perfect point. You will notice that there's a flame around the sword, and the flame begins towards the base of the sword, and it circles around the sword, twists around it, and then completely encircles the tip, so that the tip is become sort of unified by this flame. And Anne's question was about non-duality, because she's seeing, well, non-duality seems to be the right thing, but then we're having all these examples of duality within the Buddhist teachings. And the one that she brought up was the duality of conventional truth and ultimate truth. And what non-duality is referring to is that conventional truth and ultimate truth are very much like, if you look at one of those old-fashioned stereographs where they take a picture of the same subject from two slightly different angles. So you have what looks like two things. But if you sort of cross your eyes ever so slightly when you look at one of these pictures, the two things merge and come together, and you see the fullness of what that picture actually is in kind of a 3D view. This is the significance of this sword and the flame wrapped around it, and it coming together to this point where it is no longer non-dual. So within conventional reality, any object you take that we look around, not only is it an appearance that we all have conventionally agreed upon, but merged with that appearance is the nature of its emptiness. It is empty of any inherently independent existence. The existence that it has as a conventional reality entirely depends on how we are labeling it, what we see it is for, what we see its function is. In other words, it is a mental designation that we're putting onto that object. And I won't go into it too much, but different cultures will look at the same object or the same symbol, and it will have total different meanings, which means, I'll give you one example. There's a thumbs up symbol that we use that means good job, right on, but I believe it's in Nepal. Maybe it's in Nepal. The thumbs up means eat excrement. You know?
According to something Christopher read.
Right.
I mean,
So I'm talking, this is conventional reality. Depending on who is observing it and what they're projecting onto it, it's either good job or eat shit.
Right.
You know, so that convention, there's no independent self-existence to this, the meaning of this, or
Right.
anything else. So when you understand that, and you understand that ultimately everything is empty of any kind of independent self-existence, when you look at it, it's like the two parts of the stereograph coming together, and you see the full picture of what it is. This is the significance of one of the significances, and a very important one, I'm so glad Anne brought it up, of this sword, this flaming sword. Manjushri is allowing us to see the union of duality. There's everything, there's a union of this duality. And it becomes a non-dual kind of thing. So when we recite this mantra, try and hold all of these things in mind. And remember, Manjushri is about wisdom, cultivating wisdom, developing our wisdom. And let's just do this. Let's do this 21 times. It's a pretty quick one to say. So the mantra goes Om Arapat-Sanadi, Om Arapat-Sanadi, over and over and over again. So we can do it rather quickly, and then when we get to the very end of it, we go Om Arapat-Sanadi, and that's kind of like the point of the sword. The point of the sword where everything comes together, right? Okay, there we go. Hold that, have that image of Manjushri mentally before you. Om Arapat-Sanadi, 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 Om Arapat-Sanadi. Again, when you practice this on your own, you can go many times. You can go a full mala, and you can really develop a kind of relationship with this aspect of the Buddha, this wisdom aspect of the Buddha. And over time, it can become quite strong and very beneficial. So again, you can make this part of your daily practice in the morning. These mantras, it's a good way, it's a great way to start if you don't have a lot of time. And it was very, very beneficial over time. The effects are very beneficial. So we'll leave that there. We'll get more into these other mantras as we get into Nagarjuna's text. The next couple of sessions, we'll be really focusing on the Vajrasattva mantra and the Vajrasattva Buddha. So let's sort of pick up where we were.
One last interruption. I'm gonna just in the chat put if you're not familiar with the Tibetan New Year and Losar and the benefits of doing practice during Losar, you'll want to check out the info that will be in the chat. We've been a little lax, to be honest. I don't know, we used to get much more comfortable about this.
We're getting older.
We're getting old, and the practice is becoming, I guess, increasingly internal, but in any case.
Okay, are you finished? Okay. Last time we left off, we were talking about attaining liberation from cyclic existence and attaining enlightenment. And Nagarjuna says that it is actually easier for us to understand the process of attaining enlightenment because it is a process that can be understood through reasoning, logic, and inference. And we don't have to take somebody's word for it, because we can actually begin to see, as I was just describing with Manjushri, we can actually begin to see that things do not exist independently. If we really look at it, I remember this example of the thumb and what it means. It means different things according to who's looking at it. So we can logically take that and run with it. We can run with it all the way to a realization of emptiness. But Nagarjuna also says we can't get there. We can't get there unless we have what is called a higher rebirth in cyclic existence. And in this case, we all have one. It's called a human rebirth. And we have a particular kind of human rebirth where we have the good fortune and the aptitude to want to study the Dharma, to be interested in the Dharma. So it's like, yay, we've got it. He says it's difficult to understand how that came about because it is due to karma. And karma is what is called a very obscure phenomenon. So I'll go back over this. What he talked about, there are three kinds of. This is right directly in my face. Okay.
Sorry, just trying to improve the quality of the picture
There are three.
for the viewers at home.
There are three kinds of phenomena that he talked about. Evident phenomena or obvious phenomena that is very evident to our senses. So I'll give an example. I'll use the same example and go with all three of these kinds of phenomena. So say we're looking at a house on a hill in the distance, and we see smoke coming out of the chimney. We all can see that. It's clearly evident to us. Nobody has to explain anything. We don't have to deduce anything about it. Okay, that is called evident or obvious phenomena, something that is explicitly seen by our senses, all of our senses. Mm-hmm. Take the same image again, and we're going to talk of what are they?
And just showed up if you want to repeat your.
Well, it's in. She can watch the What we're going to talk about here is the second is slightly obscure phenomena. Slightly obscure phenomena require us to do some kind of reasoning and apply some logic and use inference to understand that particular thing. So take again the house on the distance, on the hill, with smoke coming out of the chimney. We can infer, we can logically and reasonably say, oh, there must be a fireplace in that house. And there's a fire in that house. Otherwise, there wouldn't be smoke coming out of the chimney. That is a subtly obscure phenomenon. There is a fire in the fireplace, and we can logically deduce that because we see smoke coming out of the chimney. Now we go to very obscure phenomena. This is what karma is, very obscure phenomena. So take the same example, the house on the hill, in the distance, smoke is coming out of the chimney. We don't know whose house that is. What's the name of the person inside the house? That's very obscure to us. We can't use any kind of logical reasoning or inference or anything like that to know what the name of the person is who's in the house. The only way we can find out what the name of the person is who is in that house is by getting that information from a very reliable source who knows what the name of the person is who is in that house. That's called very obscure phenomena, and that's what karma is, very obscure. There is no way for us to understand the workings of karma and why it works the way it does and all the many facets of it because it is so obscure to us. The only one who can tell us what that actually means and how karma works is somebody who has omniscience. And who has omniscience? A Buddha has omniscience. So what we need to look then is what they say is very reliable and authoritative scriptures that tell you the meaning of karma. And so this is why attaining a higher rebirth in cyclic existence is more difficult for us to ascertain than attaining liberation and enlightenment from cyclic existence. This is what Nagarjuna says. Liberation and enlightenment are subtly obscure phenomena. We can deduce through reasoning and logic how that works. Karma is very obscure. We don't know. It's like the name of the person inside the house. We need somebody to tell us how this works. So the interesting thing about this is that we have to have a higher rebirth first before we can actually get to liberation and enlightenment. So we have to deal with this very obscure phenomena of karma and rely on the Buddha, what the Buddha has told us, how it works. So that was what we talked about. we will not attain liberation from samsara or enlightenment if we do not have a direct realization of the emptiness of the self and the emptiness of phenomena. In other words, the emptiness of the empty nature of reality. Nothing exists independently unto itself. We have to have that direct realization. In order for us to be able to work on that, to develop that, to study that, to look at the image of Manjushri, make a connection, say the mantra, and understand what it is we're trying to do, we have to have the kind of rebirth that we have now. And this could take a number of rebirths, higher rebirths, before we can actually get to the point of liberation and then get to the point of enlightenment. So what we want to be doing is ensuring that we continue to have higher rebirths as we go along. And because higher rebirths are a result of good karma, positive karma, and because we don't actually know for ourselves, we can't deduce by reasoning or logic what generates good karma, then we have to rely on the Buddha, which is why this is being mentioned. So we have to do this first. We have to get a good rebirth first and continue to have good rebirths. And then once we do that, we can continue on this path, and maybe very quickly at the point we're at, I don't know, because look at us. We have these amazing births right now. Compare it to other sentient beings of all types that are living on this planet. Just look at animals and insects and things.
Right.
It's impossible for them to be doing what we're doing right now. You have to have this kind of birth, this kind of mind, or higher. It could be one of these celestial births, like a god or a demigod, or beings in the form and formless realm. The problem with those higher births, higher than human, is that they are so pleasant, and there's such a sense of blissed out equanimity that they don't feel the need. They don't feel the fire under their butt to like continue to learn. I have to learn, I have to develop. So human rebirth, the kind we have, is perfect, really perfect. We hit the jackpot. We should just be jumping for joy and rejoicing and being so grateful for all the teachers, all our parents, all our friends throughout countless lifetimes who helped us to get here. Everything we've gone through, every trauma, every circumstance, all the suffering, this has led us to this. And we should just be thrilled about it and want to continue with it. So that was kind of the gist of where we left off. When we look at they talk about two wings of the path, two wings in Buddhism. And you have what is called they'll say compassion wing and the wisdom wing. Again, think of this like the stereograph photo, where it seems like there are two separate things, there's a duality here, wisdom wing and compassion wing. However, if you actually look at them properly with the right focus, not cross-eyed, but with the right focus, you will see that these merge together into a perfect blend, a perfect harmony. In other words, wisdom realizing emptiness, has to do with understanding that everything exists interdependently, interconnectedly. It's a dependent arising. Nothing exists independently. Well, that merges perfectly with the compassion wing, which is all about interconnectedness, interdependence, compassion, love, wanting to be of benefit. All of that has to do with connection. And so the two wings of the path merge like into this beautiful hologram of what the path actually is. So when we understand this, really get this, that's when the two wings begin to flap and we take off and we fly. The path becomes, we move very quickly along this path because we see the logic and validity of it. There's no denying it. So that's also a very important thing to recognize. You know, remember that thing of the stereoscopic picture where the duality comes together and you see the fullness of what it actually is. And thank you for that question. It was brilliant. All right. Let's see where we are. The other thing is when we develop, think about Manjushri, as we really develop and understand what this wisdom is, and it begins to blossom in our mental continuum, we're going to be able to remove all of our anxiety, our fear, our depression, our stress, our anger, everything, because we will absolutely understand why that arises. We will know the cause why that arises, and we will know what we need to do to make that stop. It's an incredible path that the Buddha has presented to us, and it takes just the willingness to keep going with it, to practice it, to continue to develop our minds and our hearts. And it's bar none, to me, this is phenomenal, this path. All right. So now we go into the what we were not talking about last time. Higher rebirths in cyclic existence are not considered higher just because the beings who are in a higher rebirth experience more happiness and less suffering than beings who are in lower kinds of rebirths. But it's called a higher rebirth because the causes for a higher rebirth have to do with karma, and those causes have to do with goodness and integrity. And we have to understand how to keep developing those causes and accumulating the effects of those causes in order to continue with these higher rebirths. What it means is, in order for us to be here now, we have to have done something good. We have had to have done something good for ourselves and something that was beneficial to others as well, because that's how it works, because everything is interconnected. So we're already on that path. We're already going there. So what we need to understand is precisely now, going forward, what are those causes to get there? So to be born as a human being, like I said, is to have a higher rebirth in cyclic existence. But simply being a human being doesn't mean we understand or appreciate the value or importance of what it means to have a human rebirth. As an analogy, as an example, we can be reading a text on our phone, and that text is empty of inherent existence, but we haven't had a realization of inherent emptiness. So we can be reading a text that is empty of inherent existence without having a realization of emptiness. We can be driving a car or eating potato chips without having that, and both driving a car and eating potato chips are empty of inherent existence. They are dependent arisings. They do not exist independently. We can be doing those things, driving a car, eating potato chips, and not have a realization of emptiness. We do it all the time. In the same way, we can have a human rebirth that is a higher rebirth in cyclic existence, but not understand that we have a higher rebirth and the value of that and what it means for us and the importance of it. So this is one of the first things they talk about, is to recognize the value of this, what they call precious human rebirth that we have, and why it's so important. Why it's so important is because we can learn the causes for it in the future. As long as we have a rebirth like this, we'll be able to continue on this path. No doubt about it. Here we are now, we just don't want to screw it up. We just want to keep going in the right direction. So, and as I said before, the only way we're going to know what those causes are is we have to depend on a reliable source. Somebody who, knows the name of the person in the house. Somebody who knows what the causes for karma are. That's the Buddha. So to summarize all of that, Nagarjuna is saying that realizing liberation and enlightenment is easier. Well, to realize that liberation and enlightenment are the highest thing that we're shooting for is easier to understand. And we understand that first. That's because the causes of liberation and enlightenment are slightly obscure. We can deduce what they are. Understanding how and why rebirth as a human or a higher type of being in samsara is a higher rebirth is more difficult, and we come to that realization later. And right now, it can only be understood by depending on a reliable, authoritative scripture of the Buddhas. Of course, the order that we attain these is the other way around. We attain a higher rebirth first, and then liberation and enlightenment. But we have to, yeah.
I just, Brian, this question raises this issue a number of times, and it's one that relates to this. Has to do with if there are actually enlightened beings. I mean, this is my way of wording it. It's not how Brian would put it. If there are all these enlightened beings and Buddha out there, and if Buddhism is an accurate presentation of both how things exist and then a path to exist in a wholesome, good way, why is there still so much of a mess in the world? You know, if Buddha is omniscient and, you know, cares about everybody and blah, 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 and Buddhism is a good remedy for this mess of samsara, why do we see just this chronic cyclical problem in samsara? And I mean, I just wondered if you wanted to quickly sort of what your take is on that.
Quickly?
I mean, it's relevant to this. I mean, you know, it's relevant. This is a fundamental issue that we're all, and you know, to continue on this path, you have to always revisit this question.
Okay. I think all of us understand what ego self-grasping is. I think we all understand how important we have felt about me or the I or things that are mine. Me, I, mine, or yeah. That view comes from a primordial, beginningless ignorance of the understanding of how things actually are, how the self actually exists, how phenomena actually exist. So the cause or the root of what has created this world that we see, and so many people aren't turning to Buddhism, has to do with this ignorance. It has to do really with the ego, with ego self-grasping, me, mine, what I want, what I need. And we will have compadres in that, people like my family or friends who will, you know, sort of support what I want, what I need, or we'll have a relationship with somebody. And as long as that person, you know, say it's a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, as long as they're sort of fulfilling that need, what I not want, I'll give you what you need, what you want. When that stops, when they're no longer, you know, giving you what you need or what you want, but it's the opposite, you don't like that, immediately the ego will push that person away, will push those friends away, will push those people away, because they're not on the side of I, me, and mine.
This also, I just want to, in the terms of the global situation, it applies to political parties.
It applies to all of that.
I, me, mine countries, I, me, mine political parties.
It is microcosm, macrocosm. The whole world is this way. We can easily see it. Look at our media. Our media engages in one of the worst of negative actions, which is called divisive speech.
Mhm.
The media divides. They make money that way. They get a lot of people to watch one view and a lot of people to watch another view, and then they all hate each other because they're listening to this speech, this divisive speech. So this is how ego works. How many times?
It's more the ignorance, right?
Mm,
To answer Kavita's question, just, this is my thought that Buddha went this route himself. And then he, on the Four Noble Truth, he said the ignorance of our not knowing who we truly are on the, is the problem, which is the ego.
mhm.
So he went through all the frustration that we are going through right now. And then he eventually said the ignorance is one of the ingredient that's causing us to think egoistically, look at the life egoistically, and not seeing who we truly are. And that's the challenge. And he didn't live on that. He did give a prescription that ignorance is the problem. You have to learn to see who you truly are. And once you find yourself as who you truly are, is the liberation.
Right.
In my thinking. That's where I'm trying to go, let's say, to get liberated. Because this obscure thinking is all the ego grasping, delusional path I'm walking, because I don't have a capability right now to really know who I am.
Mhm.
Right?
You're correct in that.
So to draw this together with the point that Brian Herman keeps raising, understandably. We won't see a Buddha imposing upon other consciousnesses how those consciousnesses will think.
Not at
That is
all.
not a, don't forget, I mean, you have to approach this question from the level of consciousness. That's what we are. We manifest these outer layers of seeming form, physical, but in the end, all we are is a consciousness with this habitual tendency. So Brian's question could only be asked if you concretize and make and look at it materialistically, like we're bodies, we're systems, these things are real. All of it is arising from consciousness. And if you think about this a little more deeply, you will see that the whole point is Buddha transformed his consciousness to enlightenment. He can't wave a magic wand to transform our consciousness. All he can merely do is point out the process to transform one's consciousness. And I raise this in the context of this topic because, it helps raise our enthusiasm for why, what Nagarjuna has to say here and its importance in this overall picture of our suffering and the suffering of the world that we're stuck, we seem to be living in.
I think another thing that is helpful to remember is the Buddha is omniscient, but the Buddha is not omnipotent. The Buddha is not all powerful, like Kavita said. A Buddha cannot make something happen to you. The Buddha knows what's going on, knows exactly what's going on with you, but the Buddha can't make you change. The Buddha can say, here's how I changed. You can do it too.
Right.
Because we have the same nature. What they call it Buddha nature. Every conscious being, every consciousness, not just humans, every conscious being has what is called Buddha nature. It is like a seed in potential. It's not that we're already enlightened, not at all. It's that in the nature of what our consciousness is, which is pure awareness and clarity, existing in that is the potential, like a seed or like a fetus in a womb, to transform into, a magnificent being, an enlightened being. That's what we have. Everyone with an ego, including animals and insects, and they have types of egos, attachment to me and mine, has this Buddha nature. And that's why it's possible. However, maybe there could be, to go to Brian's point, there could come a time perhaps, if you've ever heard of this theory called the 100th monkey. By the time 100 monkeys get the idea of how to do something, all of the monkeys in the region do it, and then all of the monkeys on the planet can do it.
It's so bizarre.
It spreads to the consciousnesses. Perhaps there could come a time where there are enough of us sentient beings who are like, attained enlightenment or are working on that on the planet, everybody else sees that, they get that, they start doing this, and everybody starts doing it. That possibly could happen, because there's the term that you'll see in some scriptures called the Great Enlightenment. Who knows what that is? But perhaps that's a possibility. But that's not going on now.
Christopher,
Clearly, that's not going on now. So it is our job. It is our job to do this for ourselves and to help one another. Those of us who are also on the path, to help one another to do this, to support, to strengthen, to clear the confusion. Anyway,
Thank you.
Christopher,
yeah.
isn't what you were just saying about the 100th monkey, wouldn't that be an expression of dependent arising, that we're not separate, and the Buddha, like what you're saying, the Buddha is not separate to do something to us. It's all, it's not a separate, it's not, it's the, is that correct, would you say?
Yeah, because if you think of that theory of the 100th monkey, what's happening is it's not that the monkeys are going and teaching the others what to do. It begins to spread through their consciousnesses. Because the consciousnesses are connected.
Yeah, they're energetic.
They're energetic. The energy spreads. So the more there are who are on the path to enlightenment and getting enlightenment, that energy is going to spread. It's spreading among us right now.
It's very much like what you experience when you go into a room and everybody is uptight and pissed off because of some issue that's being discussed. You know, you catch that, or you go into a room where, like somebody who just naturally exudes a lot of enthusiasm and it's contagious. We're all, we are energy beings with these appearances of physical, but if, you know. Yeah, anyway, this is an important thing as we get into this Nagarjuna more and more, to always keep in mind that this process is happening at the level of consciousness. So when we're looking to the outer world, we see some evidence of Buddhism. It's not an outer world. That's not where it's at. And since becoming a Buddha, and Buddha is a state of consciousness, what we are looking for is a transformation of consciousness, not a transformation of the world. There will be some, anyway, that's.
Christopher.
I'm sorry you missed all that, Brian, because this was addressing your.
All right, well, just to quickly get back to that,
Yeah.
the point that we're all making is that, and that I started out making, is that at the basis of this existence we're in, what it's founded on, what the intention was, is ego grasping that arises out of ignorance. So that's where cyclic existence
And that's
is.
a consciousness.
That's a
mental
consciousness, and that's a
state.
consciousness that's sort of pervasive within this kind of existence, which is why it is very difficult. Like we said, the Buddha is omniscient but not omnipotent. A Buddha cannot make us change. We have to see that change the Buddha has made is going to relieve our suffering, relieve our problems, all of the ego problematics that occur. We have to come to that conclusion ourselves. And because this was founded on this ignorance of and then ego self-grasping, that's why it's so difficult. That's why it's not just automatic.
Chris,
that's the way to go.
Chris, in Tsongkhapa's Three Principal Paths, there's a passage where he's talking exactly about this, and basically saying we're swept along 4 fierce river currents. Won't go into that, but chained up and tight in past deeds, which are hard to undo, stuffed in a steel cage of grasping self, smothered in pitch black ignorance. And so what's interesting to me about that is it's all the stuff you said about grasping. That's the key, that how hardly we grasp the self. But the second part of that, which brings us back to Nagarjuna, is chained up tight in past deeds, meaning we've got to understand karma and cause and effect, because that's what it's those propensities from lifetime to lifetime that keep us and that's what's also going to free us, which gets to those 10, device of speech, to all those, and that's the cause and effect that's going to lead us out.
That is absolutely perfect, Brian. I was talk about that very passage and the meanings and what you just said. So you are like totally in sync here. That's perfect.
Well, it's
Yeah.
There's one,
Tsongkhapa.
well, I know, I just want to add this particular point as I promise, last thing I'll say. To get what this is really saying, force yourself, when you contemplate this and you meditate on this, and even right now, try to take away your physical form take away your body and your physical form and the physical world out of the picture just for a moment, and never forget we're talking about states of consciousness. So when we're talking ego self-grasping, don't picture your body with the ego in it. Picture a consciousness that tends towards ego grasping, and a consciousness that tends towards selfishness, and a consciousness. That's all we're talking about. We are so oriented because of our eyesight towards the physical seeming forms that we tend to try to drag all of that with us into the Buddhist path.
Yeah.
One more thing, last thing I want to say too. No, I just thinking that we being a human beings, what do you guys think of the intelligence that we have? I think some of the, lessons I've heard, intelligence is the culprit, because to me, intelligence is something that we're born of, we have to accept it, but that is also at the same time a cause of your suffering, because your intelligence is something that I think forms your mind, which directs you where do you want to go in life, how you want to take life. So the intelligence is something we have to accept.
What's that picture?
How to handle life, yes, because we're different than dogs. Dogs are more peaceful than us.
Yes.
But the intelligence is something we have to accept, understand, and then it's a double-edged sword.
That is the point.
We use
That's
it,
the point, right? So we always have to think.
I think we should
Right.
need to, the kind of intelligence that a human being has is really wonderful. And the kind of life a human being has is wonderful, especially the kind we have, where we can see there's some suffering, but there's a way that we can change our mind to minimize or even get rid of our suffering. So the intelligence is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a tool, and it depends on how we use that tool. The way cyclic existence, the world of cyclic existence, the way it sees intelligence would say, well, you are, a very intelligent person if you can, how to speak well, and you know how to write, and you know how to debate, and you know how to do this or that, or things that the world of cyclic existence deems as important and worthy. Buddhist intelligence is different. It's not that. It's understanding, actually using our intelligence to conceptually first understand what the nature of this existence is, and what are the things that we really need to be doing to progress along a path where we can sort of get out of this trap of grasping, ignorant grasping, and then really be able to help everybody else who we are interconnected with, help them and help them in a way that is very meaningful to them in their particular position, their particular aptitude, their particular way they think, to know how to do that. That's a really wise use of intelligence. Use it for goodness, use it for benefit, use that intelligence in virtuous ways that are helpful. Not just to say how great I am and look at what I can do and, how brilliant the mind is. That's the cyclic existence view of intelligence. But it's such a tool, and we can use it very wisely, and we can use it. So we're very fortunate to have it. It's not like we want to suppress it. We want to just channel it in the proper way. It's wonderful to have human intelligence for the Buddhist path. So much more beneficial than an ant.
So the blindsided intelligence would be bad, like you're blocked on your view and you're just
Right.
so intelligent, but like you said,
Yeah.
channeling.
You sort of have tunnel vision. you
Yeah.
know.
Right, you can't see
Or,
the
you
whole
know,
broader view.
So
You're-
that's the intelligence that's not gonna help you.
Right, right. But we have that intelligence and that can help us and the Buddha, Nagarjuna, our teachers, they're all showing us how to use it. How to use it in a way that is really beneficial, not just for us and our family and those we love, but for everyone.
But I guess at the end of the day, I'm thinking about this discussion. You know, everybody, I should say everybody, you know, Buddha, Nagarjuna, Tsongkhapa, a lot of the Buddhist leaders have come up with, you know, an explanation for why we exist the way we do. And part of it is ignorance, part of it is ego, self-grasping, part of it is karma. And those are all explanations in a practical sense that you can combine together and say, well, if you could do away with ignorance, do, you know, change your karma, you know, let go of yourself, then you can adopt the view of ultimate reality and the interdependence of everything. But it still strikes me that to do that and to truly accomplish that successfully can take many different lifetimes of practice.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Whereas existing in our egocentric, ignorant, conventional reality is much easier to do. And it seems it's what everybody else does anyways. And because it gives you, or gives one a much more immediate feedback to a particular action. Instead of taking multiple lifetimes, you know, you do something, you get a reaction in a very short amount of time, good, bad, indifferent, whatever that reaction is. It reinforces that behavior and disincentivizes this longer term, much more difficult, protracted path to lessening your own suffering.
Or the instant gratification kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you just answered your own question.
That's actually the heartbreak of it, really.
Your own
That's why I-
pervasive question about why isn't it?
You just answered it.
Well, okay, so that's fine.
But that is, you're right, you're absolutely right. And what does it take, right, for somebody to emerge, get out of that and go, wait a minute. I mean, this is not about just getting everything I want in the short lifetime I have, and it doesn't matter, you know, who I step over to get it. That's a
Right.
lot of the ego view. Because the ego does not take that long view. It says, this is it, I gotta get everything I need for me now and my family, and I make sure they have, when I die, they're gonna have, you know, what I can leave to them. It takes a bigger, longer view than that, and it takes a lot to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
A lot of training, a lot of lifetimes. Yeah, and that's why I think it's not happening like oh, everybody gets it, let's do that, that's gonna work. Because that's not how this whole system was founded. That was not the intention of the system.
So let me, maybe there's not an answer to this question, because I mean, I certainly don't know the answer, but. Let me ask, so in the Buddhist philosophy, obviously reincarnation is important, exists. Our subtle consciousness moves from lifetime to lifetime. We carry along these karmic propensities with us. We carry along some of what we have done in our previous lifetimes. So in other belief systems, maybe you know a lot more about this than I do, you know. I know that, for example, in Catholicism, they say, well, you know, if you're a good person and you do what God says, you'll go to heaven. And that's nirvana, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah.
Or if you're Muslim or Islam, you know, you get the 72 virgins or whatever.
Paradise.
Paradise, whatever. In one lifetime.
Right.
So Buddhism is really fighting a pretty hard battle against, you know, quick return on effort.
Right, and you're right. I mean, in our cyclic existence system, we have very, very ingrained habits, and we will, whether according to Buddhism, reincarnation is so. People are reincarnating, beings are reincarnating all the time and coming back to this samsara system, and it just gets stronger and stronger the more they dig into that view of me, my ego, grasping, all this kind of thing. This is why it's sort of, it feeds itself, the cyclic existence feeds itself. And in order to pull out of it, you have to pull away from all of those things that seem to be, taken for granted by most ego consciousnesses. This actually really exists the way it appears to me, and I have to get what I can out of it.
I guess where I'm thinking about this is, so what's the cell?
The long-term views.
Long-term cell is that you will be happy.
No, not long-term. What's the short-term cell?
Short-term, you'll be happy too. I can tell you for sure, in the 18 years that I have been practicing this, I am a happier person because of it. Happier, less afflictive emotions, less. It hasn't gotten worse, it's gotten better. So, and that's 18 years is a short time.
So you would argue, or not argue, you would say you can be happy today versus waiting to be happy until you're dead.
Yeah.
You can be happy while you're alive. You don't have to wait till you're dead.
Well, this idea of being
It is,
dead.
there you go, that's the
That's
short term.
There's your slogan.
Right.
It's a little bit like if you were walking, let's just say hypothetically, you had a goal to walk to Utopia. And Utopia is all the way across the country, 3,000 miles away. But Las Vegas is right there in front of you. And you go, screw it, I'll just go to Las Vegas because it's fun right now. And it'll, you'll lose money and you'll suffer and you have a horrible time. And you get stuck in Las Vegas because you can never end up winning again. Whereas if you just went, okay, I'm gonna take the long slog to Utopia, which is all the way over there. I don't know, it's sort of like that. That's not a very good.
Not to put a dark down view of Las Vegas.
That's right.
It's a big day for Vegas today.
Oh, yeah, today.
Okay, this is all really good talking here. The next stanza is stanza 4. We're on stanza 4. And it says, high status is considered to be happiness. High status is referring to higher rebirth. It's a higher status within the cyclic existence. High status is considered to be happiness. Definite goodness is liberation. So definite goodness means you've gone to a point of goodness where it's not going to, all of these afflictive emotions are not going to return. You've gotten rid of them completely at their root. This is definite goodness, or highest good is sometimes how it's translated. Definite goodness refers to both liberation from cyclic existence, and because liberation from cyclic existence means you have completely uprooted all of your afflictive emotions. They've been eradicated. They're not going to come back. You are out of the particular trap of being caught in it. Doesn't mean that if you go on to enlightenment, which enlightenment removes all the obscurations, all the cognitive obscurations that still may exist. And these would be the obscurations to actually having the omniscience of an enlightened being. So enlightenment is a further step that one takes, but one takes it because one wants to become enlightened for the benefit of others. That's what enlightenment is. Otherwise, you just want to be out of samsara. I'm done with it, over. Let me just, meditate alone on this and be happy. Of course, it doesn't work because in reality, everything is interconnected and interdependent. And at some point, that being who has reached nirvana, solitary nirvana, and is, not suffering, will go, there's not going to be something more. There's got to be something more. What the monks would usually say is, an enlightened being will sort of tap him on the shoulder and say, there's more to do.
Yeah.
Move on with this now. And that's fine. That's fine. But so definite goodness is referring to liberation and enlightenment. Here he's talking, here in this section, he's talking about liberations. And then he says the quintessence of their means, how to get there, how to achieve that, how to achieve higher rebirth, how to achieve liberation from cyclic existence. The means to do that is briefly faith and wisdom. Faith and wisdom. And here we're going to talk a little bit about faith. And it has to do with karma. And because karma, as I said, as Nagarjuna said, is a very obscure phenomenon. The only way we're going to know the name of the person in the house is somebody has to tell us. So in terms of karma, the only way we're going to know how this works and what are the things we have to do in order to continue to have a high rebirth so that we can become liberated from cyclic existence, we have to rely on the Buddha, on the scriptures, on what the Buddha has said. The very, very first teaching the Buddha gave, the very first, I shouldn't say the first teaching, not the first teaching. The first, when you talk about the scopes of initial scope to become liberated from samsara, to become the initial scope of the path, if you're talking about the Mahayana path, the initial scope, it talks about being able to get a higher rebirth, being able to get a higher rebirth. Then you go to the second scope. The second scope, or the intermediate scope, is about being able to just be liberated from cyclic existence. And then the third scope, the final scope of the Mahayana path, is to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So just if we get to this first scope, in order to have a higher rebirth in cyclic existence, we have to rely on the Buddha's teachings of how to do that. How does karma work? What are the things we have to do? How do we behave with our body, our speech, and our mind in a way that is going to ensure that we have a higher rebirth, similar to this one or better than this one that we have right now, where we can just keep progressing. So that's what faith is talking about, that we have the confidence in the Buddha's teachings. Another word for faith is confidence. Confidence, I think it means with faith, with confide, with faith. So to have confidence, we need to have confidence in the Buddha's teachings. And because it is a very obscure phenomena, we can't, until we experience the effects of our actions in the karma, we will become more sure ourselves that this is so, this is working, this is correct. But at the initial stage of this, when we're making these, trying to engage in the practices the Buddha is talking about, we have to take his word for it because we have confidence that he knows. If you just look at what the Buddha is all about, whether you even believed in the Buddha or didn't believe in the Buddha, what a Buddha is about is removing all of the negative qualities that exist to the point that they are completely gone. It's like removing all the pollution out of water until there's nothing left but pure H2O. Mm-hmm. And then the other aspect is increasing all the positive qualities, the good qualities, to a level to which they cannot be better, that they are perfect. It is perfect goodness, definite goodness. This is why he's using the term definite goodness of liberation and enlightenment. This is what the Buddha stands for. This is what the Buddha is about. So given that, a Buddha, if they existed, would have no reason to mislead you, no reason to deceive you. It is, the whole purpose is to help you. Mm-hmm. The Buddha understands how we're all connected. The Buddha wants nothing more than to help. This is the way, this is the place that we ourselves will get to. We will want nothing more than to just be of benefit, because we will understand, validly understand that this is how it's going to work. This is what works. This is why the actions of body, speech, and mind the Buddha says we should engage in, and the actions we should avoid, are so effective. Because when we begin to, based in confidence on what the Buddha has said, when we begin to practice these actions, we will start to see for ourselves that they work, that there's an effect there that's coming from those actions that actually sort of calms things down, minimizes all the disturbances, makes the anger levels just sort of drop, You know, of course, our habits are very strong with some of these, you know, our desire, our attachments, our anger, our confusion about the way things are. This is very, very strong habits that we have. And it will take time, you know, practice to lessen them until they are actually eliminated. You know, that's when we're talking about liberation and enlightenment. So the very first step he's saying is faith, then wisdom. We have to combine this with the wisdom that understands that we can, so wisdom is a subtly obscure phenomenon, meaning we can understand it through inference and logic. So by the teachings on emptiness, the wisdom teachings, we all are beginning to do this, I think. We understand, we can see, we can actually look at things and see, even on a very, very physical, obvious, gross level. Everything is interdependent. Nothing exists independently. Nothing came into being on its own. The coffee table, the couch, the person, the dog, the floor, the house, nothing came into being on its own. It is not self-existent. Everything in our physical world, everything is a result of interdependent causes and conditions, dependent arisings. That's how it comes about. We can get deeper into this, but it's a little too deep to get into. But it's also, everything is mentally, conceptually designated.
Right.
That's how it actually exists. But that's going too far. If we just look at, just on the base level of the way things exist, if we look at it carefully, we will see, oh, wow, it's true. Nothing, not a thing that I can look at and see and taste and touch with my senses. None of it independently exists if I examine it carefully.
Right.
So that is the doorway into understanding wisdom. And like I said before, when you look at the wisdom wing and the compassion wing, where this ethics fits into, ethical discipline, following the suggestion the Buddha makes of behavior of body, speech, and mind, that's in what we would call the compassion wing, ethics. The wisdom wing is about interdependence, dependent arising. Nothing exists independently. Everything is empty of that. So, like I said, when you can look at these like a stereoscope and can get the right focus, you can see they merge perfectly to a much fuller picture.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why faith and wisdom. Faith is here, wisdom is here, and then they merge. Our faith will increase and develop as we practice what the Buddha has told us to practice, to the point where we will have confidence in the path.
Mm-hmm.
Valid confidence in it because of our experience. Where are we? Okay, you're going to have to look at the study guide, folks, because there's a lot more detailed stuff in here. But the questions and what we've been discussing is it basically right on the mark with it. There's just much more detail in the study guide, and I don't want to get too bogged down in it. What Brian Bales brought up about Tsongkhapa. So here's how the verse goes. Swept by the current of the four powerful.
Different translation.
It's a different translation, but the English translation. Swept by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the strong bonds of karma that are so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping egoism, born and reborn, completely enveloped in the darkness of ignorance, born and reborn in boundless cyclic existence, unceasingly tormented by the three sufferings, suffering of change, all pervasive suffering. We won't go into those right now. By thinking of all mother sentient beings in this condition, generate the supreme altruistic attitude, which is bodhicitta, which is what Shantideva was talking about. Generate this wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings who at one time or another, since its beginningless time, have been some kind of mother or friend or father or caretaker to us. They've benefited us, no matter who it is, because we're talking about infinity here, you know, a beginningless cyclic existence. So to grasp that, so to just reinforce what Brian was saying, Tsongkhapa is saying that being born in cyclic existence is like being tied up and bound hand and foot, ensnared in an iron net, and thrown into a powerfully flowing river in the dark of night. This, by the way, is coming directly from Khensur Tegchok, who is giving the commentary that we're following on this, on Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. If we were bound this way and thrown into the river during the day, we might have some hope of escaping. We could at least see the shore. But being thrown into such a powerful river in the dark of night would seem to make escape hopeless. And here's the symbolism he's saying. Being bound hand and foot denotes being bound by our previous karma. Being captured in an iron net represents grasping at true existence. And if you remember what true existence is a synonym for, is independent, self-existent. You know, this truly exists, this truly exists. My wife truly exists. My friend truly exists. Grasping at that. So he's saying, the iron net represents grasping at true existence, as if it is real. The darkness symbolizes ignorance. The river itself represents the four powerful currents of sensory desires, eye, ear, nose, tongue, taste, mental sense, the sensory desires that we have, craving for existence, self-grasping ignorance, me, I, mine, and wrong or mistaken views about how things exist. This is what this image Tsongkhapa is showing. In this being thrown into the river, bound up like this in the dark. As a result, we're born and reborn in an endless cycle of existence where we continually experience the physical, mental, and emotional pain of the three sufferings, which we won't go into the three sufferings. We've done it before. But liberation is freedom from all this. All right, basically, it's the suffering the suffering we're all aware of. Doesn't feel good. Then there's a suffering of change. Things, you want things, certain things to stay the same, but no matter what you do, they change. You know, ultimately, you could be the richest person in the world and you're left with nothing when you die. And you're going to go on to some other rebirth. So that's a suffering of change. And then the all-pervasive suffering means that the psycho-emotional aggregates that we're made up of, you know, our psycho, you could say basically body and consciousness, or body and mind. They are contaminated by this self-grasping ego view. So that all, because that it's so it pervades cyclic existence. So as long as we are trapped in cyclic existence with this ego self-grasping, we are experiencing pervasive suffering. It's like a backdrop of anxiety and things, you know, things aren't going to always be the right, and you're worrying, and you know, it's all this. It's pervasive. And it's because our aggregates are contaminated by this ego, self-grasping ignorance. That's what it is. Okay. Oh boy, it's 12:30. All right, we'll stop there. Very good discussion, but really good.
And maybe even an answer to Brian's question.
Maybe, but I think, Brian, you basically, in order to answer, you have to noodle it out for yourself. You know, you come to your own conclusions. And you know, of course, what we talked about is something to consider. You know,
Chris,
yeah.
just real quick, like just to kind of bring it back to like practical terms, and I had a teacher that one of the main practices he absolutely demanded that we do was what was called the 6 times book, where is basically a journaling where 6 times a day we would go through the 10 positive deeds, you know, and like divisive speech, and you'd put a little plus mark and a little negative and then a to do, and you would, for each one, okay, in the last few hours, what did I do? Did I say anything divisive? You know, okay, and Or did I say something to bring people together? Okay, and you make a little note of that. Did I say something divisive or kind of, yeah, I kind of regret that. You write it down and then you write to do. So over the next 2 hours, I'm going to do something, however small, and it could be tiny. But you do that. And I mean, we had to do that every day. And what it really, that taught me was, when they're talking about this iron net of grasping, like you start tracking your behavior like that, you realize that what they're talking about is very practical things, like somebody cuts you off in traffic and you get the urge to flip them off, like that, or somebody at work gossips and you want to join in, and like that urge to get in on it, and you do it 9 times out of 10, you do it and you screw up and then you write it in your 10 times book. But like, that's all driven by the habit of karma from hundreds and thousands of past lives. And you start realizing that's why it's so hard to undo. But that's why the teaching that, hey, these are the things you need to do to get out of it are such a blessing. But it requires us to do them. Like, it's not, they can point it out because they're omniscient, and we don't understand karma, that cause and effect. We're so confused about, like, we think, oh, if we lie a little bit, it'll get us a good event, or if we gossip, people will like us, and it's all, but and you're right, like the more you practice it, the more you get this conviction and confidence that, oh wow, yeah, it really does work. But anyway, I just trying to bring it back to like a concrete, like, it's very practical stuff, ultimately, even though it's rooted in really deep stuff. And you get to the deeper stuff, but I don't know, that really helped me understand what they were talking about, of like, and why it's so hard to get out of, because it really, when you try to implement it, it becomes really difficult.
Yeah.
But we're on the right path.
Yeah, no, that's a very great explanation, Brian. And the practice you're talking about was wonderful, because what it is doing is creating new habits.
Yeah.
New habits.
So
Yeah.
I may share, I've been on a 3-day retreat in one of the cabins. We've been doing a whole bunch of meditations and mindfulness and things like that. And one thing that really struck me at the very end of the practice was balanced determination, right? And so being determined and finding those ways that you can incorporate in your everyday practice, those things that you can schedule in, and be kind with yourself in terms of that journey, and be balanced with it. So don't get stuck up and frustrated when you don't complete the things that you want to, but then just be balanced and find compassion with yourself, but continue that balanced determination. Like, know that goal is there, and then that you have the determination, make the effort to build that into your everyday practice, like the gentleman was just saying, but then also be balanced, right? Be kind and compassionate with this process, right? And anyways, I just thought, like, everything that y'all have been talking about and what I just came from and what we ended on is this idea of balanced determination, right? And so I have a list of things that I'm going to do when I get home tonight about, I want to do this, I'm going to schedule this, I'm going to schedule that. But if it doesn't work out, that's fine,
Yeah.
You can just move on to the next thing. So
Right
I would share just that little bit of what I've come from this whole experience.
That also is a super important point, Claude, and I have, experienced this myself. We have to be kind to ourselves in this process. We will continue to make mistakes. We will, in other words, fall off the wagon, if you want to put it that way, in terms of our karmic actions of body, speech, and mind. But to just condemn ourselves for doing that is not helpful.
Yeah.
The whole point is to benefit, benefit yourself and benefit others. So you have to be kind to yourself first. Don't be so hard on yourself. Just pick yourself up, start over, and keep going. Just like Claude said.
Exactly.
Eventually, you will get to that point. You will get to that goal. You will remove those afflictions and obscurations.
Well, and like we've been talking about, we're all so caught up into the current of the river we're tossed in. You know, that we're just trying to find our balance up, right? And so until you start doing that practice like Brian was sharing every day, writing it down, you don't even maybe have a clear understanding of what your afflictions are, like what your divisive speech is, how
Mhm.
divisive you might be,
Mhm.
because it's just happening so quickly, you don't even have time to pause and think about it, because you're just swept away in that current. And so like Claudia, taking that time, settling in, going inward, tracking, learning about your habitual behavior. Once you see the pattern, then you go, I had no idea. Well, now I know. So now I can then take steps to shift the pattern, to be more in line with what the Dharma is saying. Try to minimize your divisive speech. Try to do kind act, think kindly, think about others kindly, And so I think, all together, we just
Yeah.
have to be kind to ourselves as we're flailing around trying to
Absolutely,
get
it's a really
upright,
good point, Claude. And I have come to the same conclusion myself. You just can't get down on yourself because man, mistake again.
Right,
We have to realize that these habitual destructive patterns are come from beginningless time. So we often use this thing, we're turning the Queen Mary that is going in one direction, has been going in this way for a long time across the ocean. We have to turn that whole thing around, and that's going to take a little bit of time and effort. It's not like oh, got it. No way, because our habitual patterns to engage in destructive actions are so strong
right.
that we don't even necessarily see them at first. And it's only by doing these practices, which I said is the first level in the initial scope. Do this practice of find out what the 10 virtuous actions are and engage in them. Find out what the 10 non-virtuous actions are and avoid them. This is what's coming up actually next in Nagarjuna's text, and I'm in the mantras that I've been talking about, and the images of the Buddhas and the visualizations all are going to come into this and be part of a practice that we each could do on a daily basis, and that would start to turn around the negative or destructive patterns that we have and turn it around into beneficial, constructive, and positive patterns.
Right,
So that's the whole point of this, of what Nagarjuna is writing here.
right, awesome.
All right, let's close because I think we're now past time. Yeah, almost 10 minutes. Good job. We went over 10 minutes. Okay, let's go to. Well, let's do the three that we always do. Let's read them in English as well. So that's the dedication prayers at the bottom of the second page, and then the final dedication on the last page. So there are two dedication prayers on the bottom of the second page, and so let's read those in English. And when it's talking about Bodhi mind, they're talking about bodhicitta, the awakened mind that wants to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. That's what we're trying to get in the habit of growing.
Don't have that, so I don't know what the PDF is.
All right, well, let's just read it because we're out of time.
Yeah.
May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the view of emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. The bottom of the last page, final dedication. In English. In all my lives, may I not be separated from true lamas, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, fully perfecting the virtues of levels and paths. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara. Okay.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, everybody. I mean, great discussions. Really, really good. All right. Thank you, all you Zoom people. Wonderful.
I'll use Zoom.
All you Zoom friends. We're gonna say goodbye now. I'm going to end. the
Hey, Arthur.
recording.
Look
Hi,
good.
Arthur.